It's always a great pleasure to be here at Virgin Mary in St. Athanasius Church with a dear and beloved father and brother and friend. Abuna Pishoy and I go way, way, way back. And since we were youth, and there were only two churches throughout the GTA back in the day, St. Mark's and Virgin Mary and St. Athanasius. And all, just a few youth, and we were all very close together. We met up and competed in sports and conventions. Back in the day, Antonius Marcos was coming for youth conventions, and it was for all of Canada and Detroit and Cleveland and all of that, and we used to all come together. Great memories. And then our ordination was very close to each other, and we both not only chose the same name, but the same spelling. You don't find Pishoy with a P a lot. It's always a Pishoy. But we're the only two, I guess, we're Pishoy, which is the Coptic way. And always proud of Abuna Pishoy's ministry. God bless you, Mr. My father. He's a great inspiration to me. Thank you also to all the leaders of this beautiful fellowship. Young families, parents are the backbone of the church community, and it's always a great pleasure to be here. His Grace Antonina, my father Abuna Angelus, and all the rest of the amazing fathers here are all dear friends to me. I'm a little bit old school. I don't use a lot of PowerPoint just because I like interaction. I just find if I'm focused on a laptop in front of me and set points, I lose contact with people, and I love to read body language, and I love to see people's faces. I love to have eye contact with people. I find that I lose all of that whenever we have a PowerPoint. So if it's nothing like 2-to-2 formal, then I just end up speaking from my heart, and I want to hear you also as you speak from your heart. And also give me a chance if someone starts to sleep or snooze or drop like flies. If it's youth, like younger youth, I tend to embarrass them, but older people, I don't want them to get too mad at me, so I leave them to sleep in peace. After all, the scripture says he gives sleep to the people he loves. So, if that's where your comfort is, that's totally fine. How many of you are existing parents? You have children. So a large majority of us, and the rest of us maybe are newlyweds or praying, of course. So, the talk is about parenting, and how old are your children? So let's say you have children under 1. Okay, a few of us under 3. A lot of us under 5. Okay, above 5 to 10. 5 to 10, some of us. Okay, anyone over? I saw some of the dads were like, I'm not sure. How old are our kids again? I know my dad always like, always in the beginning of every year, he would come around and ask us, so which grade are you in again? So that was always, fun to toy around with our dads, that's like, you didn't know. So, I want to speak with you a bit. Here's how I want to structure the talk today. I want to start with some parenting scenarios. Okay, like since there's a relatively large age gap between our children, like newborn, few weeks, a few months old, all the way to 10 or plus or minus. We'll try to make it as generic as possible, but at the same time, probably since the majority of us have children who are plus minus 5 years, we'll focus on that young age group, but feel free if you want to ask any questions about like older ages, then we can always have a certain focus on this particular age group. So I ran through a couple of scenarios or case studies just to kind of have some kind of interaction with you to highlight some of the most obvious parenting styles. And then we can speak about a biblical foundation of parenting. And then I want to speak about some theories about like the families. The 20th century has seen a lot of psychological research on parenting, on the family theories and family dynamics. And then I want to conclude with some practical thoughts and practical advice. At any time, feel free to ask questions or stop me. Again, it's not like I don't really like hardcore lectures. I want it more to be a bit interactive, so at least we're able to make sure that you're receiving the message. You're not only sitting there and listening. So, are your spouses all here? Like, or did one spouse, one came and one is playing soccer somewhere. Sunday is a big sports day. So, how many of you have your spouses here in the room tonight? Most. Okay, I'm not gonna ask the opposite of that, but if they didn't come, make sure that yeah, they can. Okay, I'm sure they will listen. Make sure they listen to the recording. How many of you have similar parenting styles? Like, let's say when you come to any decision that you need to make for your children, you're always in agreement, 100%, that this is the way that you should go. Any of us? It depends on the situation. Okay, so it depends on the decision and the situation. Okay, how many of you, like almost all the time, disagree on the decision you should make for your kids? I think that's normal. I know with my wife, we have very different approaches when it comes to parenting. We've been married for 31 years, thankfully. So, I mean, we're still together, we're a happy couple. But when it comes to raising our children and making decisions for our children, thank God, many of them are much older now. Well, not many, but like two are much older, one is still younger. But it's always a struggle, like you don't know what to do. Like no one has a crystal ball. No one knows, I know everyone wants the best for their kids, right? But the approach might be very different. Some of us could be very relaxed, and some of us are very strict. Okay, let me give you a couple of scenarios, and then we can figure out if our parenting styles are similar or they are different. So, here's the first case study. 8-year-old Emma wants to play with her friends at the park on a Saturday morning, but she also has a piano lesson scheduled at 8 a.m. She looks at mom and she looks at dad. Okay, it could be either mom or dad. So let's just hypothetically speak that mom is the one that, you know what I'm saying? Just a random guess that mom is the one who wants to enforce that little Emma, should go to the piano lesson, okay? And then little Emma looks at daddy and says, Daddy, all my friends are going to the park. I want to go and play with them. So dad looks at mom and he says, can we just give her an exception this time? I mean, she's not going to the conservatoire tomorrow, or she's not going to be like this famous pianist. I mean, what's the big deal about missing one piano lesson? And she says, no, we committed, we already paid, the teacher is expecting her, we can't cancel last minute. And then an argument or a conversation starts in front of little Emma because she wants to play with her friends. I mean, she's 8 or she's 6, right? But she committed to going to a piano lesson. What do you think she should do? What's the decision? Huh?
Go to the lesson.
Go to the lesson? That's from a dad?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome, okay. So, what do you think? Should she, how many of you say that Emma should go to the piano lesson? Ooh. How many say she should cancel or postpone and then go play with her friends?
This is a conservative bunch.
Wow.
Good, I think inflation might have something to do with it.
Inflation, yeah, we already paid. We can get our money back.
Wait, how expensive is this lesson?
Inflation.
Okay, can I give a better example?
Okay,
So,
okay,
for
yeah, I'll pass on the mic
If
so everyone
it's a
can hear.
swimming lesson, no, it's okay, Abuna.
I said they can hear you.
Okay,
Okay.
so like if it's a swimming lesson and it's super cold outside, I wouldn't want my son to go to the swimming lesson, but of course he would say, no, you have to go.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
a real life scenario.
Real life scenario,
but
yes.
it's cold outside, and
Yeah,
I'm worried about the ears and.
right. So, okay. Should we go to a swimming lesson in the middle of the cold or
Yeah.
cancel?
Cancel.
Indoor, Abuna, we have to
Indoor. No pain, no excuse, no pain. What do you guys think? Yeah, conflict. It's I mean, it's a small one. It's not a huge one, but I mean, things can progress. Go ahead,
Suffering
Mohammed.
teaches character.
Sorry.
Suffering teaches character.
Suffering, yeah. Like,
I think it would be a good opportunity for a teaching moment where things will always conflict or stuff in your life. Like
mm,
if you start to teach that from a young age, they're not gonna be whiny about everything that doesn't align with what they want versus where they need to go.
mm.
So it would be a good.
But you
chance
think
to-
it's whiny? Like if she wants to play with her friends
It's a
and she's
slippery
6
slope.
or she's 8, I mean, is that whiny or is that
It's
just being a
slippery slope.
child?
Like if you try to be okay with everything that,
Right.
Daddy, I don't want to do this, and keep
Mm,
saying yes every time or every other time,
okay,
how would they learn?
good point. So what I think what you're trying to say is that it's a teaching moment for the child to prioritize certain things
Yeah.
that you as a parent are trying to embed in her at that moment. Okay, go ahead.
Maybe I'm playing devil's advocate, or maybe it's my more maternal side, but I almost feel that playing at that age is maybe more natural than going to a piano lesson.
Yeah.
So I feel like even if we're gonna go to the lesson, there should at least be a middle ground where then we go play. Because play is also important, like from a mental health perspective.
Mental health, of course, if you're thinking
It's a great
that,
point.
yeah, that play, okay. The play is also important. It might be at that age, so certain stage in life. So we have to discuss,
I
okay?
feel like
Other thoughts?
Most of these decisions come to a compromise.
Most of the decisions come to a compromise. Okay,
We can
so
do the lesson
yeah.
and then-
So hold that thought because that's definitely something really important in parenting, right? Go ahead, please.
I have to agree with Peter because first there's 2 points. It
Hmm.
teaches discipline.
Yes.
We have piano lesson at 8 a.m. on this day, then we have to attend our piano lesson.
Right.
Second point is that they're getting something out of this, and the park will always be there. So we can do the park after the piano lesson, but we can't. Discipline part, I think, is important too.
Yeah. So between discipline and the maternal feeling of understanding a stage in life where, to her, to a little 6-year-old or 7-year-old, I can do piano anytime, but my friends are not together anytime. But from the other perspective, you want to teach also about commitment to certain aspects because it's part of parenting and of growing up. Okay, any other thoughts about this scenario, case scenario? Go ahead.
I think that we're not gonna, like, the most important thing to teach is how the parents will communicate
Mm-hmm.
of the outcome.
Yes.
If they are gonna go or not, but heated conversation in front of a kid,
Yes.
or even escalating the conflict could lead to other consequences than just teaching commitment.
That's a
You can
very
teach
good point.
commitment in other scenarios or in other cases.
Yeah, so thank you so much for saying that because that's in the core of our conversation today is the fact that we actually need to synchronize our parenting style before we actually go to the child and say, here's what we're going to do. Because the biggest problem is not, in my opinion, whether she goes to the park or goes to the piano lesson. The biggest problem is when the parents start arguing in front of her and each one, having a preference to go in one direction or the other. That's the biggest problem because that sticks in her mind. I have a little video clip. I wish if there's time and we can play it, actually, I'll send it. If you have a group, I'll send it to you. And it's a little child who is about 4 or 5 years old giving advice to his younger sibling on how to deal with mom and dad. It's quite funny, actually, because, the approach, how to get mom and dad to say yes to something, okay? So he's giving advice to his younger sibling. I'll send it maybe to Hanan, or maybe I did Hanan. Yeah, it's just a funny little video. But anyhow, that's the idea, is that kids are very smart and they know who to go to in order to get exactly what they want. Okay, here's another scenario, actually. Okay, so it's a feast night. Easter is coming up. Okay, Easter liturgy is a midnight liturgy, right? Little kids have bedtimes, right? So, we tried to do the early liturgy, but it didn't work. So all the liturgies are midnight. I think it's here as well, Abuna, right? I'm sure. We tried it. So it's Easter. We have to be at church, but the liturgy ends at midnight, or close to that. Do we take the child to a midnight liturgy? Or let them sleep in their bed, or let them come sleep in the church on the bench, as our parents used to do to us when we were younger. Just go and sleep in the church. So honor a bedtime, or go to church for a feast night. How many would honor a bedtime of bedtime here, 7:30, 8 o'clock. For younger, I'm talking at very young, okay? I'm not talking like older children, of course. How many of you would say bedtime over a midnight liturgy, for example? Like a year? What's the cutoff date?
No, I'm saying if you're under a year,
Oh, under a year.
bedtime is kind of important, or otherwise they're gonna be disruptive and crying, and other people won't be able to hear them.
Right.
But
Yeah.
after a year, I think it's fine.
You don't mind missing the bedtime.
No.
So most people would show up to a midnight liturgy here? Yeah? How come it's not the same on the Eastern level? How did you do that one? Like, ما فيش مشاكل. Really? Oh, that's awesome. Like, for our midnight liturgy, everyone is like bedtime. If it's after 8 p.m., you're not gonna see us.
There will be some here, I'm sure, who would, but generally speaking,
Everyone is good, like just bringing kids and letting them.
pushing. At a certain age, I don't know at which age. I don't know if everyone would say. Like I heard you about if they're too young, maybe not. But other than that, no problem.
So they just come. They will see it again. But it doesn't cause any. How about bedtime in general? Like some people are really strict on,
That's more like it.
like, huh?
That's more like it.
Yeah, okay, so not just the religious. Let's say, yeah, a family gathering, whatever it is. Like, I know some people, it's like, yeah, first couple of 2-3 years, it's like, you know, if it's 7:31, you know, start panicking and putting kids to sleep. And kids are like, can we please stay up and enjoy our cousin's family? No? You don't have these issues here.
Well, yeah.
Oh, you do?
They exist, of course.
I bet everybody has.
Of course they exist.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead,
I
Amy.
think it has to do with what's going on the next day. Because
Mm.
it definitely affects. So, like Laura was saying, like we enforce it 5 out of 7 days, and our youngest is 5 right now.
Mm.
But before it was just more challenging.
Yeah.
But you deal with the consequences.
We found that being rigid at a sleep time creates problems in other situations. For example, like on Easter or Christmas, it's a feast, you wanna stay up.
Mhm.
Sometimes we have a social gathering, everybody. So we found that a more flexible approach, where it's like you're rigid, if you gotta get up for school, you gotta get up for church, you have a rigid bedtime, and then at other times it's okay, you can relax, but most of the time it's rigid. Sometimes you relax it a little bit, so that way they have flexibility to be able to do both. Because if we were to do rigid all the time, they might get cranky when they stay up late. And if we're flexible all the time, they're gonna be cranky in the morning.
Well, you know, the amazing thing about this day and age is that parents are actually thinking about their parenting style and thinking about their children. In previous generations, you know, parents kind of mimicked what happened with them, their experience, you know, with their own parents. Here's how it's always been, this is how it's always gonna be. So there hasn't been a lot of change, but you know, modern day has seen a lot of research, conversations, and also the impact of different parenting styles. Now we need to understand that our children are 50% of each of the 2 spouses, okay? So they're gonna inherit, is that a good thing? They're gonna inherit some traits, characteristics from each one of you. So some traits will be more dominant, others will be more dormant and, you know, hidden. But just remember that it's 50-50, okay? There's gonna be, you know, not just the looks, but we inherit from our parents the personality and the characteristics. So let's look at the biblical vision of parenting. So very important to understand that our children are a gift from God to each and every one of us, okay? A gift from God. We are parents, but we are their guardians. Really, they are God's children. And He has loaned them to us, okay? To take care of them, to raise them, to train them in the path that He has set for us. The scripture says children are an inheritance from the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is a gift. So with that concept, we know that we don't own our children, because there are some authoritarian parenting styles, okay, not authoritative. They make that distinction between authoritarian and authoritative. Means, yeah, if you know this is part of my personality, I want to teach them, as you were saying earlier. Yeah, if you have a piano lesson or a class, if you have, you know, school, work, all of these things, you need to commit, and we need to instill these values in them. But authoritarian is dangerous, because it's you do as I say, and all we're thinking is that a fist of iron, you know, as if these kids are our slaves or our servants. That we know better, they should obey us, regardless of what our decision is right or wrong. You know, they just need to submit and obey. And even to pets now, we don't treat them this way, right? But sometimes we want to treat our kids with so much authority to the point that we suffocate them. But also the other extreme of permissiveness, okay, and just allowing them to do what they want regardless of the consequences, then also that's the other extreme is also not good, because this way it's almost like we don't care. You know, there's some parents now who never passed on to their children values, morals, faith, beliefs, a sense of identity, and they just grew up in the world doing whatever. It doesn't really matter. And these kids also get lost. Like they have no grounding and no firm foundation in where do they belong and what values they acquire in life. But I think, please go ahead.
Thinking that would also be a way to lose your child's trust.
Of
As
course.
they grow up, if you're just being, my word goes, I'm very firm and I know
Yeah.
better than you, then they would not feel welcome to come and share things or ask for our opinion. Because, okay, I know dad is just going to be mad at me, dad is thinks he knows best.
Yeah.
So that's how they get further from us.
Yeah, no, definitely, most definitely, you're correct. Parents are still, like like most recent research shows that the home parents are still the most influential people, individuals in any child's life. Like, don't think it's friends or social media or other circumstances or studies or all these things. Number one influence on our children still remains to be parents, hands down. So keep that in mind. Is every word we say to them, every conversation we have with them, it's being embedded and implemented in their lives. Each one of you probably will come to a point, and we all had arguments with our parents growing up, but I'm sure as you get older and you have your own family, you start to speak exactly as your mom or dad, and you say, I can't believe, I just said that. My mom used to say the exact same to me, and I used to hate it when she said it to me, but now all of a sudden you are repeating that side. But we also learn from our own experiences in our own homes with our parents. Some of our parents are immigrants, first generation immigrants, and some are born and raised in North America or in Canada, etc. And that all influenced their parenting style, the culture they lived in, the norms around them, how they raised us. So I think it's really important for this particular generation to start thinking and discerning what will work with the next generation. How are we to raise our children? Let me ask you a question. What are the most important values that you want to embed in your children in the next generation?
Put God first.
Sorry?
Put God first.
Put God first. Put God as a priority. How many would agree on that presumption? I think all of us would. We're all here today, so it must be a really important value. So put God first. What's the second value that we want to embed in our children?
Importance of family.
Family. So it's always God number one, family number two. Okay. What's number three?
To go along with that, what's the definition of family?
Yes.
In this day and age, with sexual dystopia and all that, so that's a tough one.
What's the definition of family?
Yeah. It's another topic, man. So
Yeah, that's gonna distract us to another conversation, and we can. But let's think about priorities, and then we'll go to each definition. So we said God, family, and then ethical values, morals, ethics, values. Okay.
Skills for God, skills for
Interpersonal skills, career, studies, right? Sorry? Work ethics, okay. Other values?
To love themselves the right way.
Love themselves the right way. Beautiful. Yeah, so self-esteem and self-confidence. Okay, like the value of self, yes. Health, take care of their health, 100%, yeah. Any other values that we want to embed in our children?
Communication.
Communications?
Proper communication.
Yeah.
Communication in general. Nowadays, there's no communication at all.
You get the one word answer or the one letter answer. It used to be one word, now just the one letter. Yeah, I get from my son, like I said to my message, blah, 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 and he says, okay. Good talk. Yeah, I'm glad he answered something at least, like, it's not just like seen. At least I'm not blocked. Thank God. And if Terry. Sorry, go ahead. I got someone else. So, yeah, good sit. To serve. Yeah. So in this list of priorities, what's the time commitment behind each one of them? Like, imagine if we say like such and such is a priority, then is there a time commitment that is attached to this priority, or does it just come naturally by osmosis?
There is a time commitment.
But is our time commitment, does it go in the same order as the priorities that we just set?
Maybe not.
Probably not, yes, I agree. Like, I mean, we all know that our first priority is gone, but I mean, doesn't necessarily mean that we're gonna be praying 24/7 with them or such and such, right? So how do we resolve this dilemma, like between priorities and what actually like time commitments we have, in your opinion? And we've said, you know, all of these beautiful priorities, and I agree with you 100%. But in practicality, in real life, how do we go about it to ensure that our kids have these priorities? Go ahead,
For
Wasim.
us as couple, we need to be set as examples for them.
Can you say that in the mic? So everyone can hear.
So just as a couple, we need to be set as an example for them. So we have to lead by example. We're not gonna like let them sit down and just teach them all what we wanna say at once. They have to see it in us.
Yes, 100%. Thank you so much. I agree with you 100%. Setting an example for our children should be our priority. Like, they want to see these priorities in real life, not just as a theory. So look, we can tell them, you need to be at church, you need to go every week, you need to serve, you need to be good people, and you, all of these things, but if I'm not doing it myself, it's a waste, right? If one of the parents, let's say, is not committed to being, you know, part of the church community or serving, or if we have a foul mouth and we're always like swearing in front of them, all of the things, how can we go back and tell them you can't swear? If they know that we have less than perfect morals or values that, you know, we live by, we can't. If we're not living a healthy life, then they're not going to see it in real life. Again, parents have the most influence on the children, hands down. Wasim.
I was actually going to say the same thing. It's more like, you know, values are not really taught, they're inherited. Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're surrounded by these values, you automatically kind of absorb these values.
Yes.
But you can't just sit there and kind of feed the values to someone. I mean, in my opinion.
Yes, of course. No, thank you. Go ahead.
I don't want to go to a different topic, but I think that's also very important for couples, not just for our kids.
Yeah.
I can't tell my wife to do something, or this is the way to do it, and I will do it a different way. I have to lead by example.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you. What else? Any other thoughts?
I'm sorry, I need to share that story. So my niece was 4, and we were speaking, and I was like, "Why do you think church is important?" She looked at me. She was like, "That's the only time that my dad wakes up in the morning and his off day, and he's not complaining. So I think Jesus is important." Like usually when he's off or something, he complains. And once my sister was telling me, she was like, "Don't complain in front of her." She was like, "She's gonna say the same. I don't want to wake up on Sunday." So complain inside the room about waking up on Sunday already. But once you're out, we're going to the church. We're happy. We're dressed. And she was like, "Yeah, because he always complains, but I think Jesus is important. He's not complaining." So I think it's just how they see it, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think we can all agree that we're dealing with a very intelligent generation, very observant. Their IQ is just off the charts. You know, most of them are like 20-year-old hidden in a 2-year-old body, right? You feel that when you're dealing with them, you're dealing with like adults. And this is really important to, and they deserve this, okay? If we keep in mind that theological concept that these are God's children and we are inheriting this blessing. We have the blessing of raising them, but they're really God's own children. Then we treat them with the utmost love and respect since their infancy. Okay, they are full human beings, and actually this is something beautiful about our Orthodox Church, is that we make the little ones full members of the church only a few weeks after their birth. We don't wait until they're like, how many years to do this and that. Immediately they're baptized, giving the Holy Communion, and confirmed, which means that they are full members of the Holy Apostolic Orthodox Church. And that concept of John the Baptist, who felt the presence of Christ as the two mothers met together, tells us that the Spirit of God could be working in those children since infancy. And that's very important theologically from our understanding that when we have a child, we're dealing with them with the utmost love and respect, to respect their intelligence, but also as adults, we have the responsibility to walk with them throughout all of their developmental stages, which is fully understood, and to understand them and to have a sense of conversation with them. The scripture also says in Proverbs, train up a child in the way he or she may go, even when he is old, he will not depart from it. So every opportunity we have to teach the children about their way, their path, morals, values, faith, definitely this is what will determine their future. The scriptures speak about obedience. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and your mother. This is the first commandment, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. But also, besides speaking to the children to honor their parents, also it speaks about the parents not aggravating their children. Okay, so reasonable parenting, balanced parenting is important. Discipline your children and they will give you peace. They will bring you the delights you desire. Please sit. I know we do. I think what St. Paul was speaking when he says, do not agitate, aggravate, لا تغيظوا أولادكم. It means do not push them to their limits, to anger, to anxiety, like being reasonable. Like sometimes as parents, we're coming from a very authoritarian point of view towards their children, whereas they need to obey whether they like it or not. And sometimes as parents, we need to make those decisions for our children if it concerns their safety or something truly that may harm them. However, in many cases, it is possible that when there's no emergency or something urgent, that we establish this relationship with our children to have a conversation with them as human beings, as an equal human being, not necessarily like we love. Sometimes, gives us a sense of power or an authority when we, demand that our kids go. And in our mind, of course, we justify it because we think this is what is best for them. But most recent, studies would suggest that children are going to respond better when they are part of the decision, or they feel, the why, and they understand. For example, we started with that whole concept of a piano lesson or going to play with my friends in the park. And we said, we need to commit to this, but also playing is important. So a good lesson for our children, rather than say, no, you can't play with your friends, you have to go to the piano, is to say, okay, how about if we, commit to going to the piano lesson, but we still acknowledge that playing with your friends is important and trying to find a happy middle ground where they can, feel also validated that, yes, play is important. It's not, they're not being silly or just they want to get out of the piano lesson. It's play is really important, or being with friends at that time. So the concept here, I think that is important is to think about how is it possible that when we see our children as an inheritance from the Lord, as a gift from God, that we establish calm communications with them, that we come to a reasonable kind of agreement in the way that we should raise them in a way that they also would be healthy, functional children now, but most definitely healthy adults. That's our ultimate goal. How can we turn them into healthy adults that have these beautiful priorities and that we are walking with them throughout this time and challenge, right? Okay. There are some modern day psychological theories as well as studies that show the effectiveness and the importance of this beautiful family dynamic that is important to exist in each and every family. So there's something called the family systems theory, okay, and this is important because it says, and we were speaking about the definition of the family earlier. What do we mean by family? So there's what is called the nuclear family, and the nuclear family is basically the spouses, the couple, and their children, with no interference from outside. This is where it all starts. Like, you need to take ownership of your family. The spouse always comes as a priority, not the children, to each one of you. In the liturgy of matrimony, we say, for this reason, a man and a woman, of course, will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. They are no longer two, but they are one flesh, right? Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate. So within this nuclear family becomes a priority. Each one of you is a priority, not the parents and not the children. You start with the spouse, and then it extends, of course, into the children. So emphasizing independence of the family members and the importance of boundaries, roles, and communication. These are the three things that are really important in that dynamic family, okay, within you. Very important, the importance of boundaries, roles, and communication. As we've been saying all along, it's really important to start with the two of you, that you figure out, I want to call it your dance, okay? You figure out your dance, meaning sit together and discuss what is your parenting methodology, okay? Your approach to parenting. And it doesn't mean that you're always gonna agree on everything, but at least try to have a unified front so that the kids don't take advantage of you. At the end of the day, they're very smart and they know who to go to in order to get what they want. So maybe you can assign different decision tasks, approaches. Like I told you in the beginning, like my wife and I are very different when it comes. So, my wife would do the piano lesson regardless. I would do the play, right? I said, have fun, just let her go. And so, we had to figure out our dance over 30 years of marriage, okay? Where I had to step, because I think that, well, my child is just like me, and they would rather do what I suggest. But, over time you discover that there's 50% of them who's also like the other spouse, who is just trying to get away from something. Doesn't mean that it's not important or important, but it just means that their priority. So we needed to discuss first, okay, let's give us a moment. We'll go speak about it, we'll discuss it. Or, we set a schedule, and then we both have, a united front where also they need to do their play, but also, of course, they have to commit to that. There are many other theories, but I'm not gonna trouble you with all of them today. I think let me, just because of time, I want to conclude by just a few thoughts about parenting in general, where we can just pray and think together, how is God calling us? And it's basically going to be just a summary of what everyone has mentioned so far in this conversation. Number one, model Christian values. As a Christian parent, you are your child's most significant role model. Demonstrate for them these Christian values like love and kindness and forgiveness and humility And it will show in the way that you interact with one another and interact with them. One of the advices I received as a young parent, this person was a dear mentor of mine, told me the best gift you can give to your children is to love their mother, like your wife, their mother, like to show her love and respect. Because when the children grow up in a healthy environment where the parents care for one another, they genuinely love one another, they always, even showing affection towards toward one another in front of the children. I know there are many cultural barriers, maybe not so much in this generation, but in previous generations, valuing her mind, her experience, never putting her down, being a participant in the chores of the home. Again, this weren't very common 30 years ago. Now they're most common in your generation, which is quite amazing. Just giving the children a healthy environment at home where the parents love and respect one another is the best gift you can give, okay? It's not a big inheritance. It's not security in the house. It's not paying their tuition, okay? Many of us paid our own tuition. It wasn't, it's not, don't think that, I need to do such and such to secure for them a big future where they don't have to work hard. Look, easy come, easy go. If we give everything to our children, okay, they will not value it. The things that we value the most are the things that we worked hard for to earn, not the things that were just handed down to us so easy. So don't waste your time and your life building something superficial for your kids. What your kids need is you, your time, your attention. Okay, go with them to the park and throw the ball and build memories and silly things and be goofy and this is what the kids need, because no one else will be able to give them these memories, okay? If they receive it from an aunt or an uncle or a cousin or a friend, it's not like receiving these things from you. So when you figure out these priorities early on in your life and you're not like too over-occupied with like work and spending crazy hours, to pay for a huge mortgage because you want to give them comfort, honestly, please forgive me, okay, you may probably not go rent an apartment and have low monthly payments, then kill yourself and never see your kids and make them live in a castle with every kind of amenity. Because the years that you have with your kids are the most precious years. When you travel, when you play sports, when you build memories, these are the most important ones. Secondly, teach biblical principles. There's a beautiful couple of verses in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 6 about when you sit together, as a family and over a meal, tell your kids about all the stories that God had done with Israel and bringing them out of the nation, out of Egypt and crossing the Red Sea and all of these things. I was privileged because my father is a storyteller. And some of the most memorable times we had as a family was around meals. Like meals now could be like very boring, everyone on their phone and everyone's just so busy doing whatever and distracted. We can't wait to eat it and then run back to our rooms. If you can establish even 1 or 2 meals a week where you can sit with your kids, okay, of course, all electronics down, prepare the meal together, okay? We think that, the parents have to prepare kids, just show up, they eat and they leave. Actually, kids love being part of the meal preparation. Give them a little task, and I know they need to be, not a few months old, of course, I understand, a little bit older, okay? But give them something small, give them little utensils or tools or something to do. They feel that they contributed to preparing the meal, and then all sit together and come at dinner time and talk about the day, talk about plans and vacations and fun things, and don't make meal times about them being in trouble for not cleaning their room or brushing their teeth or not doing their laundry, Because sometimes, these are things on our mind that we want to instill in them, but you know what? It makes the mealtime boring, not fun and exciting. As parents, we always want to send the message that we were always perfect. We were top of our class, and some of you are or were. I know that. I wasn't. We want to portray to our kids that, we are flawless, never made any mistakes. I was really blessed because my father wasn't like that. My father was a menace. He was a troublemaker. But I love my father to death because you know what? He always portrayed to us that he was just a regular person. Like, he made his mistakes, he corrected them. Yeah, he learned, tough means. But he's just a regular person, just like me and my brothers and this and that. He didn't try to be a superhero in front of our eyes, meaning lying in order to pretend that he was perfect. He always told us very rarely do you see a parent going to his children and telling them about all of his mistakes as a youth and as a teen, growing up in Egypt in the 19 whatever. But that really made a huge difference. Please go ahead.
Could you kind of clarify the fine line between sharing to give them the experience so they don't do the same mistake,
Right.
but you're also the role model, so they're gonna wanna be like you?
It is a fine line, and maybe each family dynamic is going to be different. However, I'm just sharing what worked with us, as his children. First of all, he has, and I'm just going to speak about my father. He has an outrageous sense of humor, so he always made us laugh. But then, when he would tell a story, he would say it in a very humorous way that we get the message, but we also understand that every mistake comes with consequences. So most of his stories would end up in him getting a good beating from his parents. Because back in the day, they weren't gentle like we are now. They were running after him with a manfada. But I know it's a fine line and it's a very different generation, but we have to think what would work for our children. But what I'm trying to say is that there's a pressure on us as parents today to appear to be perfect in front of our children so that they don't, do the exact same mistakes that we did. But his parenting style was that, I'm just gonna be, very honest with you, and I hope that you wouldn't make the same mistakes that I made as a child. The reason he was sharing with us these things, and in my opinion, two things. First of all, it prevented us from doing a lot of things, but even when we made mistakes, we weren't afraid to go back and speak with him. Our mother was a little different story because she was really perfect, God bless her. She was the way she grew up, she was doing everything right. So if we as boys, did things, so you don't always understand if you haven't been in the same path. So it was a blessing to have both perspectives, I hope you're trying to understand what I'm saying. But they're very different approaches. But in certain times, we needed the nurture of the mother, who taught us how to pray, how to be close to God and close to the church. And at other times, we needed our father who lived in the practical world and made mistakes. And so we needed these two things. And that's something I say to a lot of the young couples now, is that, you always want the perfect spouse. But you know what? God can use an imperfect spouse to raise perfect children. Sometimes that could happen. That's from my experience, at least. Mahab.
Who inspired your love of God? How did that come about? Who inspired it in you?
I'm still starting, the journey, but definitely it was my mother, our mother, who instilled in us the love of God and the love of the church. Our father was very practical, he was the oldest of 8 siblings. His father kind of passed early on in his life, so he was predominantly responsible for his family. So he needed to earn the bread to feed the whole family, and to also stand with his father when he was a lot younger in business and things like that. So he didn't get a great opportunity to be planted in the church. But my father has because not only had, it has, like, till now, God gave him health and strength, the highest moral and ethical values of any human being. Like even people in the church, like the way that he grew up, he was a man of integrity and morality and ethics, and he taught us that. He taught us to be a man of your word, to live ethically, not to take advantage of anyone, to think about your name, your reputation, because that's what he had in his business. Was very important for him, these things. So again, the practical lessons that we learn, which have a theological or spiritual implications, right? What we gained from him was just, in my opinion, as important as the seeds of faith and love of the church that we gained from our mother. So it's always a combination, and I always want to say, some people say, but this person doesn't practice, doesn't do it, but what else do they do? What else can they offer to the family? Maybe not the same level as one spouse, but different doesn't mean bad. They complement one another. I want to hear from you if you have any questions. I've spoken a lot. I have more points, but I don't want to just talk. Yes.
So we can take, if you're done with it, we can take some questions from the floor, and then we also have a Slido link that we sent on the group. So we already have a few questions that have come through, and on there on the link you can actually upvote a question, because then what we'll do is we'll just take maybe the top few that Abuna can answer with the time that we have left.
Father Pishoy can help me also when I learn from the second one. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions that you want to ask now, you can, and then in a few minutes I'll just start going through the ones on the Slido.
Abuna, I have a question. So I find I'm always treading this fine line, right? Where it's like, if something is happening
Can you use the mic?
Sure.
Can you hear?
I said, I feel like I'm always treading a fine line where, like, if something is happening between my kid and another child, or even between siblings, I'll tell them, like, do the right thing. What would Jesus do? And then after a few minutes, I'm like, go hit them back. So I feel like I'm so contradictory, because I'm like, do the right thing, and then I'm like, go step. I don't know, but I feel like I'm always treading this line where it's like, I'm patient, and then I'm like explaining why we couldn't buy cotton candy or whatever, and then after I'm like, that's it, enough, right? So I feel like, and Wasim will sometimes say, we have to be firm, right? But sometimes when I find I'm teaching and I'm saying the right things, it goes on and on and on, and sometimes I really wonder, like, where do I draw the line? Because I waver on both sides, like of the side of, like, truly, I want them to have good values, do the right things, like, I believe it that way, but then I'm like, all of a sudden the left side of me talks, right? So, like, what's your, like, guidance or best practice there to really, continue teaching, but also, like, instill in the child so that it doesn't keep going on, or we're not raising children that are, like, too soft on the other end, right?
Wasim, do you want to comment on
No,
that?
I had a different question.
Okay, so
I'll leave that
hold
for
on. Abuna, I'm sure would you like to comment on that?
I'm always around.
I think you speak for most of us. And, kids can really push our limits, especially if they're very persistent on wanting something and you want to be patient, and then finally you just explode. Look, even Christ himself, who said, turn the other cheek, also when he was hit, he looked at the person who hit him and he said, why do you slap me? So Jesus even asked the people who took advantage of slapping, why do you slap me? So he stood for himself. So I think what we're trying to teach our children, and it depends on their developmental stage, of course, where they are in life, how old they are. In the beginning of their life, and this is my personal approach, and I'm sure, please correct me if I'm wrong, we need to teach the kids self-dignity, self-respect, to stand for themselves, because they will get bullied if someone hits them and they just stay quiet or walk away. So they need to stand for themselves. The commandment of turning the other cheek is an advanced spiritual status that may not correspond to a little child's developmental stage. For me as an adult, let's say after I've developed my self-esteem and self-confidence, and I know who I am in Christ, I know that I don't need to react in a certain way. I can take for someone who comes up to me and slaps me, I can be rational, I can be calm, and I can deal with the situation to understand how. But for a little child, no, they can't. So early on in their life, they need to understand that they should, like Jesus did. Why do you slap me? Go speak with someone, defend themselves. Christians or kids especially are not floor mats where people can just step all over them. And so also our own understanding of our own spirituality, has to flow with their developmental stage to understand where they are in life. So if we're able to have a conversation with them to say, how did that make you feel? What response should we take? No, definitely, you should stand for yourself. That will instill in them self-confidence that I'm not, a floor mat as a Christian. And then it will come along. Afterwards, as they get older, they might be able to react a little differently. But it's okay also, there are two approaches to parenting. One of them is that I'm standing here and my kid is looking at me and they're receiving from me all the information, all the tasks, all the commands, and I'm telling them down. But there's another approach to parenting where we say we're both on the journey towards Christ, and He is our target. We set Him in front of our eyes, and I'm holding your hand, and we're walking together towards Christ. This way, it takes off some pressure of me as a parent to be perfect all the time. What if our kid sees us when we're all nervous and we're losing our emotions and we're emotional in some way, or say a word? Then it's a big burden on us that we have let our kid down, because we try to set such a very high standard of perfection that is unattainable almost, to think that we're perfect. And that's something I try to do with my children. I said, look, I'm not perfect, and but I'm sure he knows, and the biggest pressure is always on priests' children and priests to be perfect, because everyone is like, if Abuna's kid is they're always the standard, like they wore this, they said that, they've been to this, you haven't been to that. It's like it's a lose-lose. If you do, you're condemned, if you don't, you're also condemned. So there's a huge pressure on us as priests, which is the same now, of course, for every parent, to be perfect and to raise our children in a perfect way. And I announced in the church very, very early on, when from the pulpit, I said, look, our kids are just normal kids. They're not super kids. They will make their mistakes, okay? Don't put any pressure on anyone because you are a servant's child, because you are a priest's child, that you live up to these standards, because they will give up and they will ultimately come and feel like we're always under scrutiny. We're just kids, like they didn't choose to be priest kids. As the priesthood, took a call and PKs, yes. right? So I went up to my kids. I said, "Look, I'm not perfect. You're not perfect, but we're both on this journey together. You know, I want you to be the best kids. You know, you could be, and I want to give you the best that I can, but I can't promise perfection because perfection only, you know, is towards God. I want you to keep your eye on Christ. If we can just establish that, just keep your eyes on Jesus, okay? And then if you see me do something well, do it. If you see me mess up, then you know it's my human nature, and I'm still working on myself as a parent. I'm not perfect in any way. Please.
Another question. We have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and sometimes there are moments of weakness where you raise your voice or you show with your kids. Is it right to apologize to your kids after, or you're confusing them at such a young age?
Like when you're disciplining,
Yes.
and you happen to raise your voice and then apologizing right after, does it confuse them, like, in the moment that they're not understanding you're disciplining them, now they think you're taking back what you just did? When you apologize?
ربنا بشوي. Call a friend.
Is there a 50-50 option?
Change the question.
I don't think there is an issue when at all. Actually, it's pretty good when you apologize for an act that was wrong. So what I just told you, that you shouldn't have done this and that. That, you know, I still stand by that. But the fact that I raised my voice, I'm not happy with that. And I'm sorry I raised my voice. However, is what it is. So it's very good, in my opinion, to take ownership of the mistakes we do. And it's good that we learn too. Like, we can't keep doing it every time I raise my voice and then I apologize. I raise my voice and apologize. I mean, at least it has to be less and less. We're not perfect, as Abuna said, and we will at one point raise our voices. Well, we have to get better at it. But to apologize for an act, and this is very important, you're still good even though you've done something bad, is modeled when I say, you know, my discipline is still good. But the fact that I raised my voice, you know, I actually feel this was not right, and I'm sorry I raised my voice. I love you very much. Okay, so that this mean I can watch? No. You can't watch. And so they'll get it. They're smart, but it's beautiful and quite modeling when we take ownership of the wrong. Otherwise, then my kids can raise their voice and then say I'm sorry, you know, or not say I'm sorry, thinking that it's okay to do that. And that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just have a related question to what you asked. Because when you talked about like synchronizing and like the importance of having like a similar opinion in front of the kids, and if you have 2 very different parents, one like who's very patient and like maybe just very tolerant of especially like toddlers or difficult ages that come along, and then the other parent gets heated at like the first mistake that the kid will make, and resorts to kind of like yelling right away. How do you find that middle ground when a kid does something and then, like an example is like, if they're having dinner and they ask for a candy after dinner, and you say like, yeah, okay, finished all your food, you can have 1 piece of candy, and the other parent's like, no, they've already had yesterday or something, some small thing like that. And then if the kid, if I say like, the lenient parent will say like, okay, you can have it, I'll be like, no, I already said no. And so how do you try to synchronize when like both ends are just very extreme? Like one is just very calm and patient, and then the other one's just very like hot-tempered and heated.
Yes, thank you. This question is perfect for Hanan to answer.
What just came to mind when you were talking, just not to have bad cop, good cop, because that's the worst thing we can do. And then they'll know which parent they'll go to when they want something, and the kids are very smart that way. They'll know who to go to for what. So I think it's best, yes, as you said, to synchronize it together, and I think that takes like the conversation away from the kids, when they're not around. So yeah, maybe right on the spot, we may not be able to handle it right away. So maybe we can, if it comes and keeps repeating itself, then maybe it's best to take it, raise it together as a couple when the kids are asleep or some other time. How should we handle those situations? I think an ongoing communication, ongoing conversation would be so helpful.
And just remove the candy from home.
Yeah.
Make sure it's not around. It's the source of the problem.
Yeah, so as somebody had mentioned, the best thing is really not to talk in front of the kids, because they'll know if you guys are not in agreement, and they'll keep asking for it. So yeah, best thing is have that open channel dialogue between the two of you away from the kids, whether it has to do with the candy or whether it has to do with bigger decisions, because as kids get older, the decisions are gonna get bigger, gonna get harder. So it's best to have that channel of communication as spouses.
Thank you.
I
have some questions.
Okay.
So I'm gonna join two questions together. One of them is, how do you answer or deal with your child questioning the natural sexual norms? For example, what if a girl asks, why can't I marry Mary? Another question was, what if my daughter says, I feel like I was meant to be a boy, my teacher said I can change my sex, I get to choose. How do I handle this?
Let them speak, because I'm going to show you what's I know it's on everyone's mind right now, this whole conversation of gender identity, etc. I don't want us to turn it into a monster, okay? Like, what if my child comes and asks these questions, okay? The best thing we can do for our children is to model for them what a happy marriage is, okay? What a functional, healthy, heterosexual marriage is, okay? And then, when they see it, remember when I said the best gift you can give to your kids is a healthy marriage, respect, your spouse, etc. They will see and they will observe. And when someone comes and asks about their own gender identity, okay, don't panic and don't turn it into a big monster, okay? You can take it from different perspectives, and we as Christians, okay, we understand the biblical concept of creation. God created them male and female from the beginning. He created them, right? And he joined the male and the female and spoke about procreation. At the same time, we have to understand that maybe our children will go through different, again, developmental stages where they are confused, because there's a lot of conversations happening in schools about gender identity, etc. When it comes to homosexual marriages or unions or relationships in general, okay, they have you to look at as a family, as a couple. Pray with them and affirm them. Just affirm them. Say you are loved, you are respected. It's possible that these thoughts will come. Is it for us or for other people? We have to understand, are they asking for their friends or for themselves? For their friends, this is their own decision, their own, the environment they live in. And of course, we understand all the conversations that are happening in society today. There are certain limits on what we can or cannot say, but God is calling us to love everyone regardless of what they do or say, okay? So, to a friend, to someone at school, may God bless them, we pray for them, and may the Lord do what He wills with each person. Each person has to make, that decision. As for us, you take care of yourself, okay? You see the role model in the home. You pray that God, clears for us what He created us for and to do, and to be proud of God's creation, to be proud of who you are as an individual, as someone created in the image and likeness of God, and try not to change that. It's a big conversation, of course, and it's hitting everyone in the same way. Would you like to? I'm sure.
I'm just going to say, very similar to,
you teaching from the very beginning using resources. So if you're teaching your children about sexuality, I hope you're using some resources, some stories, some books, and you can refer back to this and say, we believe that God created us male and female, and so on and so forth. So you can go back to these resources and build on them, and that's going to be more helpful. It's also important maybe when they get older. So I spoke to the grade 5s and 6s here in the church on gender identity, and I didn't start by gender identity. I spoke about where do we know the truth? How do I know something is right or wrong? And I gave very practical examples as to what was thought to be right, but was actually wrong, and what was thought to be wrong and was actually right. And then I spoke about what are things that we can say these are absolute, and what are things that we can consider, it would be different to you than for me. And we gave examples, and I got them to do some activities where if you think this is subjective, jump. And if you think this is objective, and I explained the terms, sit down. And, so we start somewhere else, but it's foundational to the issues we are dealing with today. It's like, how do we know what we ought to know? And then you build on that and say, and nowadays, as you can tell and hear in schools, there is always the question on sexuality and on gender identity and gender dysphoria, and what are these, and is it easy for someone? Probably is not easy for someone who's going through something like this. So do we mock them? Do we make fun of them? Absolutely not. What do we stand for as Christians? So we build from the how do you know, and to the point of what the world is throwing at our children today, which will be different probably in a few years, and was different a few years back. But I noticed that when we start talking about gender identity right away, or sexual orientation right away, the immediate response of the kids is opposition. There's a reason for that, because they go to school, they hear what is normal, they watch their episodes, and they see what is being normalized. So we have to start from foundation and build up. I find that to be quite helpful.
Thank you. We'll do one more. So what if both spouses have strong beliefs about a topic that opposes one another? How do we go about that and be synchronous in parenting? I know Hanan answered a very similar question from Miriam. There's also another question that I want to tie in with it, that was, what if you and your partner have different spiritual goals? How do you decide what the child will be held to? So I guess being synchronous, and even if you have different goals or different opinions on something, what do you hold the child to?
I think it's really important to get like a third opinion, an unbiased third opinion, if at all possible. If there's somebody that you both trust, okay, so most probably it might not be like a parent, one of your parents, because they might be biased, right? So like someone like a confession father, like a counselor, like a mentor, someone in the community, an uncle, or someone that you feel they have a valuable opinion, who would listen to both sides of the stories. Because at the end of the day, there could be biases, of course. Like, let's say, okay, I'm just going to use my own experience again. Let's say if someone who's really close to you, to God and to the church, comes and speaks with someone who's like absolutely, let's say, secular, or someone who's like wasn't raised in the same experience, and you go to someone who is like very biased towards the church and say, my husband doesn't want to go to church, he doesn't want to send the kids to Sunday school, he doesn't except, of course, what's the ultimate answer? You're wrong, of course you should listen, you should go. But before actually getting this opinion, okay, the person who's unbiased should listen to both perspectives and hear, let's say, that parent, and hear their perspective and see, okay, what are your strengths? What can you offer? Maybe they can offer other things that the other spouse cannot. And in that case, we can come to a good conclusion where the other person feels also heard and validated, okay? And then you can say, well, okay, maybe you can take care of this aspect. You feel that there's a value, let's say, in taking the kids to church or this or that, and you can be with them whenever you can. And then these other areas that one spouse is not really good at, which might be, practical life or sports, or, then they are also good parents. It doesn't mean that, they are not completely going on one side, that they are bad parents or that they are worthless parents. Because sometimes we have that feeling, and I'm sorry I say that, as a church community, we always undermine or undervalue other people who are not exactly like us or perfect like us in one way or the other. But you could be missing out on a lot. And remember, your child, again, is 50% you, 50% that parent. So they also would have, admiration for other things in life that maybe you cannot answer or you cannot respond to. So what I'm trying to suggest is that have a neutral, unbiased third party who can listen to both sides, who can help you come up with a compromise for the benefit of your child. So it's not always going to be my way or the highway, my way or your way. No, there could be good areas of conversation where we can find common ground, and ultimately it will be for the benefit of our children.
We'll do two more questions. Yeah, so it's how did your mom pass on that love of God that you were speaking about? And do you have anything to say, like if someone didn't have that positive role model in their lives, so their instincts might be different, like do you have anything to say to that?
My mom grew up in a very Christian, Orthodox, conservative house since her childhood. She was engaged in the church. Even I saw like plays of her, or pictures of her being in a church play, taking the role of the Virgin Mary, all dressed as the Virgin Mary. Close to the sacraments, close to the liturgy, and how did she pass it on? She was the one who usually took us to church as children, attend the liturgy, made sure that we went for confession. She read with us the Bible, she prayed with us at home. So I mean, she was a perfect mother, honestly. Don't mean that perfection in the way that there's no mistakes, but yeah, there were many, of course, parenting things that as any mother back 50, 60 years ago would worry about her children in one way. But all I'm trying to say is that, if I say something about my father, I know where I'm going. My father was a very practical person who grew up in soup. Do you know what the soup is? He was a jeweler. So most of the culture in the place that he worked in, his own business, was very Islamic. So he knew more about the Quran than he knew about the Bible. And that's the funny part. He said, "Oh, your son is a bishop." A lot of confessions coming out there. But as I mentioned earlier, he lived a very ethical and a moral life. I'll tell you a funny story. He told us one of his funny stories. Finally, when he was older, he attended the liturgy. And then, the end of the liturgy, there was a bishop in Giza. We used to live in Giza, so my mom took him to church. And at the end of it, Ambatumadius, you know who he is. He passed away now. Rest his soul. So Ambatumadius is sprinkling the water at the end of the liturgy, and then my dad is like, "والنبي شوية مية هنا بس." It's like a common word. والنبي is like for the sake of the Prophet Muhammad. Anyways, don't get any bad images about any of my parents. I'm just being very vulnerable with you. But you know what? Like he's telling us all of these stories, and he's like cracking, and And then like, oh, you have a son who's a bishop and another who's a priest. And how did that happen exactly? See, only by God's grace. No, honestly, I'm telling you, if I am like a fraction or like a little nail of this man, then I would feel that, you know, God has really blessed me. And of course, I can't take anything away from my mother because she's the one who planted all of these seeds. But I think just the final message I want to convey to you is that cherish one another, even with your differences. You're never going to be a carbon copy of each other. You always, you know, you've been raised in different cultures, times, siblings, families, education. All of that contributes to who you are today. If God gave you grace and you decided to marry one another, it means there's something very special about the two of you. Embrace your differences and work with them to make your home, your household, a much better and stronger household. Rather than work against each other, work with one another to reach your goals, and may God bless your children and your homes. Thank you.